All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. We're booting up a sort of economic simulation today to uncover the hidden forces that shape absolutely everything, from your local markets all the way up to global oil prices. Because when you peel back the layers of how businesses and nations actually interact, you don't just find random, chaotic decisions. You find strict mathematical frameworks.
Consider this our system boot-up sequence. Here's our agenda for today. 1. Welcome to the oligopoly. 2. The cartel's temptation. 3. The Nash equilibrium. 4. The prisoner's dilemma. 5. Global stakes. And finally, 6. System rules.
Starting with Section 1, Welcome to the Oligopoly, the rules of the game.
You know, unlike a completely competitive market where everyone's just a price taker, meaning they just have to accept whatever the going rate is, an oligopoly is totally different. It features just a small handful of dominant players. Think about the market for tennis balls or wireless networks where a few massive companies control like 95% of the whole market. Because there are so few sellers, every single move is a highly calculated strategic interaction. Your profits don't just depend on what you do, they depend entirely on exactly how your competitors react to what you do.
Moving right along to Section 2, the cartel's temptation, simulating Jack and Jill's water market.
Okay, let's run a little micro scenario. Imagine a town where Jack and Jill have to figure out how much water to pump from their wells. Now, they could easily act like a monopoly. If they secretly collude and form what we call a cartel to artificially limit production, look at the math here right at the 60-gallon mark. Their combined profit maxes out at $3,600 if they price it at $60 a gallon. They could literally just split that, pump 30 gallons each, and take home $1,800 apiece. Sounds like a flawless, rational plan, right?
Well, actually, human nature, specifically self-interest, introduces a huge glitch in their cooperation. Each player starts doing the math in their head, wondering if producing just one more gallon will bump up their own individual profit. They're weighing two competing forces here. First, there's the output effect, meaning selling another unit at the current price makes you more money. But then there's the price effect, meaning flooding the market with more water actually drops the price, which lowers your profit on every single other gallon you sell. If that output effect is bigger, they're going to pump more. And because they're making these decisions entirely independently, they inevitably drive down the price and completely destroy their perfect cartel.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Nash equilibrium, the core logic of the system.
Named after the brilliant economic theorist John Nash, this equilibrium mathematically proves just how fragile cooperation really is. Eventually, Jack and Jill are both going to decide to pump 40 gallons instead of their agreed-upon 30. That drops the price, and boom, they both end up with $1,600 each instead of $1,800. But here is the absolute genius of the Nash equilibrium. Once they are both producing 40 gallons, neither of them has any mathematical incentive to change course. Knowing Jill's pumping 40, Jack's best possible countermove is also 40. They literally lock themselves into a suboptimal outcome just by being rational.
And what's crazy is how universally this applies. A full 100% of surveyed economists agree on the explanatory power of this model. We're talking about the exact same underlying logic that governs everything from a penalty kick in soccer to corporate price setting, all the way to massive military conflicts. It is essentially a fundamental law of human strategy.
Let's dive a bit deeper in Section 4, the prisoner's dilemma, the psychology of strategy.
Picture this. Two criminals, Bonnie and Clyde, get caught and are thrown into separate interrogation rooms. Looking at this payoff matrix, they both face a simple binary choice: confess or remain silent. Now, if they cooperate with each other and both keep their mouths shut, they get a tiny 1-year sentence. But look closely at Clyde's options. If Bonnie stays silent, Clyde's smartest move is to confess, so he walks free. But what if Bonnie confesses? Clyde's best move is still to confess, to avoid a 20-year sentence, bringing his time down to 8 years. Confessing is what game theorists call a dominant strategy. It's absolutely the best choice for him, regardless of what Bonnie decides to do.
So the real kicker here is the tragic irony of the whole situation. By acting completely rationally and looking out for number one, they both confess and they both get 8 years in prison. They totally blow their chance at that mutually beneficial 1-year sentence. Basic fear, mistrust, and self-interest completely override what would have been best for their collective well-being.
Now let's zoom the simulation out for Section 5, Global Stakes, OPEC and Arms Races.
A completely perfect real-world example of this is the OPEC cartel, which obviously controls a massive chunk of the world's oil. Initially, they were incredibly successful at restricting supply,
artificially jacking up oil prices from just $3 a barrel in 1972 to a staggering $35 by 1981. But, as we've learned, cartels are super unstable. The temptation for individual members to cheat on their production quotas was just too overwhelming. They started secretly pumping extra oil to grab more profit for themselves, the cooperation totally fell apart, and by 1986, prices crashed all the way back down to $13 a barrel. The Nash equilibrium strikes again.
And we see this exact same dynamic in arms races, too. It doesn't matter if it's an economic arms race, like Exxon and Texaco drilling way too many wasteful wells just to siphon oil from a shared underground pool, or a literal arms race. The Cold War was, at its core, just a massive, incredibly high-stakes prisoner's dilemma. The relentless logic of self-interest pushed both the US and the Soviet Union to endlessly stockpile nuclear weapons. It created a highly dangerous, non-cooperative outcome where both nations were significantly less safe and just mind-boggling amounts of resources were wasted.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, System Rules, Public Policy and Antitrust.
Now, here is a really fascinating twist. While the prisoner's dilemma is obviously terrible for the players who are stuck in it, like Bonnie and Clyde or the US and the Soviets, society as a whole actually cheers when oligopolists fail to cooperate. Think about it. When Jack and Jill can't hold their water cartel together, or when OPEC members start cheating on their quotas, that means more supply and cheaper prices for all of us consumers. So in the business world, non-cooperation is exactly what we want.
Because we want firms competing tooth and nail, policymakers use antitrust laws, things like the Sherman and Clayton Acts, as the ultimate system override. These laws legally prevent cartels and make price fixing strictly illegal. Of course, applying these laws gets a big murky in practice. Regulators have to heavily scrutinize really complex practices like tying, forcing a customer to buy some unwanted product just to get the one they actually need, or predatory pricing, where a massive company intentionally takes a financial loss just to bankrupt their smaller competitors. It's a delicate balance to make sure they aren't accidentally punishing healthy competitive strategies, but the core goal is always the same: ensuring the economic game remains fair, highly competitive, and ultimately beneficial to the public.
It's such a fascinating lens to view the world through, isn't it? From massive global oil cartels right down to the dynamics in your own workplace or even your personal relationships, that underlying tension between self-interest and cooperation is literally everywhere. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a powerful new framework for mapping out the hidden decisions happening all around you. So, here's a question to leave you with. In your own daily interactions, are you playing a truly cooperative strategy, or are you actually just trapped in a Nash equilibrium? I'll let you calculate your own payoff matrix. See you next time.